Hello and welcome back. Bit of a different video today, bit of a two parts really. Bit of a hobby update to show where I am at the moment with my Waterloo campaign items, and also I'm not going to call it a book review, but I'm going to go through my initial thoughts on the I guess the rule book. It's not actually called a rule book. Look, now I look at the book itself. But yeah, the rule book for Black Powder, the Waterloo campaign. So that's going to be the second part. So first part, a little bit of an update where I am. So as you can see in front of me, the line infantry I have at the front is the first battalion that I painted. So that's as per my previous painting video. That's that complete, along with, from the initial sprue, a artillery piece, along with one stand of the 95th Rifles Division, and the commander, brigade commander. So that's all from that first sprue. And as you can see now, I have now finished a second squad of line infantry unit battalion. So there we go. So I'm now up to 2 units. So I'm getting there slowly but surely. Not sure how well the phone's picking up these images. And I've also, apart from what you've got here, I've got various items built and primed as well, but I also yesterday had my first attempt at a cavalry piece, complete with moustache. If I was getting a bit closer, maybe that focus. So I had a little go to see how easy it was going to be painting moustaches, and a first try at a cavalry model. So there we go. Not the greatest of photos, not the greatest at focusing or images. I'll see if I can get some better images maybe in the future. But that's my first trial of a cavalry model. What I would say is what I found is the detail on the side of these models is really good. Very crisp and very, picks out, the contrast paints go on well and pick out all the detail. However, the very front of the miniature is not quite so detailed. So you have to use a bit of, I guess, I was going to say inspiration, but a bit of innovation on the front to try and pick out what it should be. And I guess this is because, as the nature of the sprue side on, with the tool pressing down or injection, that's where all the detail is, and it's got to pull away from this way. It's in a plane like that, a sprue, so I guess the mould pulls away backwards and forwards, which means the detail at that end and that side of the miniature is always going to be less. So I don't see it as a criticism, it's just the nature of the process, I guess. But yeah, it does mean that it's mostly noticeable on the chest, where I struggled a bit to see where that sash went. But we'll see how it goes. That was the first attempt, and I think it came out okay. So looking forward to painting a lot more cavalry. If I try and get a little bit into show. Oh, box here, so you can see there's a lot more cavalry and items ready, raring to go in there. So yeah, that's just a bit of an update to where we are. So, second part of the video, and the main purpose of the video, is a look at the book. Now, I'm not going to say it's a review because it's a big book, and I think I need to be very well versed in the book to be able to review it fairly. So this is more my thoughts from someone who's new to Napoleonic and Black Powder, and reading this book for the first time with no background knowledge. And while it's pretty good, and to be fair, there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of information, it takes a while to absorb it all. There were a few things I found when reading this book that just made me wonder, am I reading wrong, or am I missing rules, or is it maybe not laid out the best? Now, one thing I'll say is that today arrived this book, and in reality I think this book is needed for this book. It's not so much a supplement, but some of the things too this book talks about isn't only really explained in this book, so that's unfortunate. But for now I'll treat it like I don't have that, because that only arrived today along with this guy, so I'm looking forward to him. So that book's going to be a subject of a video for another day, I think. So for now I'm going to concentrate on this one as though I don't own that book, because as far as I'm concerned this should be a standalone book. That's how it's sold, so that's how we'll treat it. So what have we got? Now, like I say, the book is good, very detailed, lots of information, as you can see by how thick it is and all the contents. But let's go over it in very, very broad terms. So here we have an example of an army. You've got your army commander there, your general, and then infantry and cavalry and so on, brigades, all led by a brigade commander. So that's good, gives me an indication of what an army should look like. Helps me, as someone who's not done Napoleonics before, picture it in my head. That's the layout of the army. So that's great. Now, one thing I've noticed is, so you've got your army general, that's your main guy, that's you as such. Now, the way this game works is these brigade commanders issue orders, and from those orders to these guys, they can carry out actions. That's all well and good. Your army commander doesn't issue orders, but you can join any of these, I believe, and give them a reroll to their orders, or give them a reroll. So one curious thing that I can't understand, so this guy essentially doesn't really matter. He could be as cheap as chips because all he does is give a reroll. If he doesn't really matter, then what I don't understand is if I whiz to, I'll have to stick to the British list because that's what I'm more familiar with. There. So if I whiz to the British Army list, I assume he's the divisional commander, but again, the names don't really tie up. So one minute it's a general, one minute it's commander-in-chief, next minute it's divisional commander. For me, it's very confusing because they're all different names for what I assume is the same person, but I'm only assuming that. Having no knowledge of Napoleonics means I have to make these assumptions. It's not very clear. So I assume that this guy is a division. It says here, see, army commander there. And on the next page, he's called the general. Okay, and then here, divisional commander. For me, which one is it? So anyway, staff rating 789. So this is obviously the bigger the number, the more likely it is to pass commands, and the more commands you're likely to get. So this divisional commander obviously has staff rating of 9, therefore is 50 points. But as far as I can tell, he doesn't give out orders. So why would you pay for a 50-point staff rating 9 divisional commander? I must be missing something and I don't understand. So if you guys can enlighten me on that bit, I'd really appreciate it. So that's that guy. Then we've got going down. The other thing is, where do you add this guy? I mean, I guess you just pay for him and he just sits loose like that, is what I assume. But if that's the case, you can also go back a bit, special characters like Wellington or this guy. Again, divisional ratings of 9. But there's no points for this guy, so I don't know how you use this guy. And I don't know, it doesn't say what he replaces either, so I assume he replaces one of those. But if Wellington replaces that guy, then what does this guy replace? So I'm a bit confused there. And he's got no points values either, so I'm not really sure. You know, maybe it's more for thematic games, which is fair enough, but with everything having a points value, it seems a bit odd not to give these a points value. Now, I'll caveat with this again. This fixes that, but I'm treating this as its own book because that's what it's supposed to be released as. A couple of other things I noticed on some of these special characters. So, staff rating of 8, headstrong, adds 1 attack. In fact, let's stick to Wellington for the moment. Staff rating of 9, decisive, adds 1 attack to combat, adds 3 attacks to defending, so on and so forth. What I don't understand is if this guy is the guy that sits here and is not, therefore not part of a brigade, then I don't understand how he adds an attack. Or if he's decides defending, is that everyone? All of them defending gets the bonus 3 attacks. So it does say that he's involved in, so I assume you would have to physically join a unit to benefit from those attacks. And as far as I can see, joining a unit seems very risky. So I understand it's there, but it seems a bit odd. The other thing I noticed is he adds 1 attack in any force that he's involved with, and 1 attack. But the rules for commanders is that a level 8 gets 1 attack anyway. So this one's saying adds 1 attack to any combat that he's involved in where he's force charged. Doesn't matter because a staff rating of 8 gives you 1 attack anyway. So it seems a bit of a superfluous rule. And then the other item is, for example, decisive, page 120. So let's flick to 120. If the general... So this commander can always re-roll a failed command roll if the player wishes, but if the re-roll result is another failure, automatically counts as a blunder. Now, that decisive ability you get as being a general anyway. So you get, I talked about a re-roll earlier, so you get a re-roll. So he's already got a re-roll for being a general if he is this divisional commander that we talked about earlier, which I assume he would replace. So that decisive special rule again seems wasted, I suppose, because he's going to do that anyway. So got a bit of odd sort of scenario with these special characters. I don't really understand. If you can explain it to me, what I'm missing, and I'm happy to be I won't say corrected. I'm happy. Well, yes, I guess corrected, but I'm more happy to be shown exactly what is the correct interpretation of all this. Because for me, reading it with no background knowledge of the era and historical wargaming, it just kind of, I don't know, it seems a bit grey. So that's the commanders, essentially, my kind of thoughts on the commanders. The rules seem fine. I've not had a game yet, so I don't want to comment too much on the rules because I don't think it'll be fair. I think I need to play the rules before I comment on what I think of the game. I will just underline that with, from what I read, it seems very, very good. I'm quite excited. Sounds like a really fun game. Yeah, from what I've read so far, I'm really eager to have a game. So I've got no problem with how the game seems to play by reading the book. So I want to have a game and then I can feed back on what I've really found with the game. So what I'm going to flick to instead next is building an army list, because it took me a while, quite frankly, to wrap my head around it. So what we saw a moment earlier, this page here, the British Army list. So this is what I'd use to build my British force, obviously. So you take your divisional commander, you need 1 divisional commander, no matter what. So I've got to take 1. Like I say, you might as well take the staff rating of 7 because he does nothing. These stats aren't used from what I can see, so why spend any points on him? That's my thoughts, but again, tell me why you might have one of the others. So then, from what I can see, I'm not going into focus, there we go. You need to have 1+ British Infantry Brigade, so you've got to have one of these. It also says 1+ Hanoverian Brigade. Now that to me means I've got to have one of those and I've got to have one of those. I don't think that's actually true. I think it's either or. Well, either one of those minimum or one of those minimum. And if you really wanted to, you could have both as well. I think that's what it means in reality. But the way you just look at this page, it looks like you've got to have one of those and got to have one of those. Again, if that really is the case, let me know. I don't think it's the case purely because on the next page, it says a Hanoverian cavalry brigade, but only if the infantry brigade is in the army. So that sentence there, if we can focus, tells me that you don't have to choose that one, and I would say you didn't have to choose that one if you chose that one instead. So that's a grey area that I think I've worked out. Again, let me know if I'm incorrect. So let's have a look at a British Infantry Brigade now. So there we can choose the brigade commander. Let's try and get in focus a little bit. And this creates 2 to 4 line infantry. Okay, perfect. So I've already done 2 of those, so I'm up to almost 80 points in a what, 1,000 point army. Oh my god, there's going to be quite a lot more to build and paint yet. But anyway, now to this we can add 0 to 1 rifle company. So there it is. It says a rifle company. So let's go to the units. Let's go to the infantry section. Again, remember, I have no knowledge of this kind of era, this form of warfare. So I'm relying on this book to give me all the information. It needs to be possible for someone with no knowledge off the street to come in and understand exactly what the interpretation is. Foot guards, it's not going to be them. British line infantry, it's not going to be them. They're these ones here in bold. Light infantry, it's not going to be them because they're called British light infantry. British riflemen, close. It says rifle and it says rifle musket, but it said rifle company. So in reality, I'm pretty sure it's those because it also says small and there's a section for small. But again, they're just switching between naming things, which for people who aren't familiar with this just adds confusion that doesn't need to be there. If you're going to call it rifle company, call that rifle company. Or if you're going to call this, it's going to be British rifleman, put British rifleman there. It's just little things, I think. Now, the other thing was, obviously, this talks about a British rifleman being essentially, in some instances, I think it says it's somewhere the 95th. And these could be the 95th. So I think what it is these are kind of line infantry and these were the skirmisher versions. So that's why it had just a little bit of confusion which one it might mean. I assume these because of the rifle, obviously. But, you know, it would have just been nice to be clearer. The other thing that makes me believe it's that way is the fact that somewhere down here, where are we? Upgrade one of the original battalions to a light infantry unit. So that makes me rule out these ones. So therefore, by process of elimination, it's got to be these ones. So that's just, you know, a little bit that you can work out. It's reasonably easy to work out, but it's just adding confusion for, you know, no reason. So what else have we got? Okay, so in this section as well, we can go down. So you can upgrade 1 in 4 battalions to a large and downgrade any or all battalions to small. So this one, for example, shows you quite clearly there's a regular and there's a small version, but there's no large. There's no stats for large. So what is a large? Let's go to the infantry unit maybe. Let's go to the main one. So up here, light infantry, but it just talks about normal size. So again, what is large, what is small? Now, I thought maybe, you know, it would be somewhere in the rule book or something, but when you go to some other stats, we saw it at the rifle company earlier. We see Jaeger's one talks about being small, and especially in the French, if we get to their cavalry, somewhere. it shows regular and large. So it seemed odd to talk about small and large, but then not show any stats. Now, after a lot of going back and forth in the book, I think I've worked it out, and I've had that confirmed by, again, this book, but this book shouldn't be needed to confirm what is in this book. And it turns out you got to read all the little bits in the rest of the book to try and figure it out. So what happens to a large unit? Essentially, a large unit increases its, let's start with this company, for example. It increases these stats, essentially, and you change how many bases you've got. If we go all the way to the front of the book, there is a very small bit in the casualty markers which talks about, well, firstly, we've got large and small sizes of the units, but this is basically base sizes. So that's your standard base size 4, making it small drops 1, make it big increases 1, and then cavalry obviously starts at 3, so increases to 4 and decreases to 2. So that tells you what to do with the bases, but it doesn't actually alter the stats of the units. So to some degree, what you would do is just say, well, I'll make everything small, make it 8 points cheaper, and all the stats stay the same. Well, I knew that couldn't be the case. There must be a reason for it. Here is 1. So hidden away in the casualty markers, you increase your stamina. So it says stamina is essentially starts at 3. A large becomes 4, small becomes 2. So that's great. Only you can't use this because a regular size foot guard's stamina is already 4. So surely what this should be is standard is plus or minus nothing, large is plus 1, small is minus 1, and then artillery is always 2. I think that's what that should be, not 4, 3, 2, 2, because it just hurts people who've already got better stamina values. So that's one area I think is, again, grey, but at least it was there. Now the other stat that can change is, we'll look at shooting first. Now the shooting was very difficult to find, and that's page 44. And that is this bit of blurb here. It is worth this one here. Roll 4 dice. So large units roll 4 dice and small units roll 2 dice, with standard being 3. And then it says, these values are indicated as part of the unit's fighting qualities, so there's generally no need to apply these modifiers during a game. So we don't need to do these modifiers because it's saying your stats will show you what it is. But that can't be right because, again, typical value is 3, but this guy's already 4. So, you know, you do have to apply a modifier. Now there's actually a modifier chart here. So why it couldn't have just been added large plus 1, small minus 1 to these, or well, to this one to add the extra dice or remove the extra dice, I don't know. But again, the section for the adjustment to shooting is in this small section, but then you have to apply your own kind of interpretation to make it work for all units. The next bit that you can upgrade is hand-to-hand combat. And hand-to-hand combat was in 74 in here, and this little arrow here, just as with shooting units that are large or small, have adjusted combat values and roll more or fewer dice. As a rule of thumb, large units have a value 2 greater than standard and small units 2 less. So starting at what was it? Does it say what it started? I can't remember if it said what it started. The average value is 6. So 6, which means increase in size would make it 8, decrease in 4. But it doesn't really say a standard like the other ones do. So it does kind of more say refer to this, and then at least this one does say add a base on it goes to. This one add a base on it goes to 2 up. Remove a base it goes 2 down. So if anything, that was a bit clearer because it says gives you some generic values, but then says, you know, what you would do when you add or remove a dice. So the combat one was actually in some ways a bit clearer, but again there was an opportunity to do it here. You've got tables to modify dice. Why not put it there? I'm not sure. Yeah, so I think that was all the kind of queries I had about these stat columns. The only other area that I thought was odd that I was just going to feed back to you guys was on artillery. Now, looking at the Brits for artillery, let's just go to one of their artillery sections. Artillery units. So basically artillery is that, 3 bases, and that's your shooting value. And that's for all artillery, doesn't matter what it is. 5.5 inch howitzers, the howitzers do have a different rule, that's in the advanced rules section. But any cannons are these stats, and the armament saying smoothbore artillery, that tells you the range of your artillery by referring to the range chart here. So smoothbore artillery 48 inches, great. So all my cannons shoot that stats, that range, no matter what. Doesn't matter what cannon it is. So then I go to buy cannons in my artillery brigade, and I notice this: you cannot have more 9-pounders batteries than 6-pounder batteries. What's a 9-pounder battery and what's a 6-pounder battery? Nowhere in the book talks about 9-pounders and 6-pounders. It's just got artillery. So I don't know. I mean, in the blurb here, the kind of the narrative, it talks about a 9-pounder there. I think it talks about that some horse artillery might have been 6-pounders. I can't remember. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know the purpose of that. Oh, I've lost it. Don't know the purpose of that notation. I don't see. You can't have more 9-pounder batteries than 6-pounder batteries. I'm just totally stumped on that one. Everything else, like I've said, I've kind of made some assumptions of what it is supposed to mean. But this one, I'm totally stumped. The only thing I can assume is that 9-pounder is a smoothbore artillery, and a 6-pounder is a light smoothbore artillery, so reduces its range. But nothing backs that up. So I don't want to make that assumption at the moment. So I kind of feel that everything is, I don't know, just that stat, and that note is pointless. Another bit that I was going to just mention, which again I can assume is correct, but again, not having any kind of background knowledge, it would have been nice to have it written somewhere possibly. But it sometimes refers to as this unit can be either Anglo or Hanoverian. Now, I know that Anglo means British, but it would have been nice just to, keep the terms the same. So British Army, but now you're talking about an Anglo Army. Again, swapping and changing between terms just can get a bit confusing for those people like myself who are just not knowledgeable on this. Now, going back to the point about the smoothbore artillery and range, the only thing I would say, and this is why I don't want to treat it as 9-pounder is regular and 6-pounder light, is if we go to the French artillery, flicking and flicking, I said. Flick a couple more pages. Oh, go back a couple. We get the artillery for the French here. Now here they have smoothbore artillery and heavy smoothbore artillery. Oh, heavy, that sounds good. But what is it? There is no heavy smoothbore artillery. There's just light and smoothbore. So does that mean that everything that said smoothbore is actually light and a heavy is actually smoothbore? But in that case, still, what's the difference between a 9 and 6-pounder? Other than being downgraded maybe to light smoothbore artillery, there's still no difference between a 9-pounder and a 6-pounder from what I can say. So the artillery bit has me stumped, I'm afraid, and I don't quite know what to make of that bit, other than treat everything as artillery, because even this makes, I don't know how to separate these two out. So yeah, I think, but I mean, some cases I'm kind of nitpicking, but it'd just be nice to have it a little bit clearer for those like myself who are new to this. And I think it could have just, yeah, it could have just made it easier to understand and build lists and yeah, know exactly what stats I should be using. Another thing I noticed, actually, the French have the same sort of structure as the British, so a divisional commander, and then the brigade commanders have their own brigade. Sorry, then the brigades have their own brigade commander. So that's the same, pretty much the same sort of structure as the British. But I did notice the Prussians had a slightly different structure in that. Get to their summary. They have to buy a brigade commander per brigade, which is different. There's no divisional commander here. I think I cut off then. I think it recorded for too long. So yeah, it's slightly different. There's no divisional commander. There is just the brigade commander leading the brigades for the Prussians. So a bit different. So I don't know in that case where the general comes in, where you buy a general for the Prussians. It doesn't seem to have an option for choosing a general, from what I can see. In which case as well, if there's no option for choosing a general, how do you put this guy in? Because I assume he should be the general. So yeah, it's a bit bizarre, but I mean, these are, while they're small niggles, I'll go back to my original statement, is the book is awesome and the rules look awesome, and the imagery and the quality of the print and the way overall how it's laid out is pretty good. I think we could have utilised some of these boxes and tables to get all the stats and modifications in and make it a bit more streamlined. So you know, once you've read the text, you only have to refer to a box and not have to keep trying to find all the text to find the rules hidden away each time. You can just refer to a section to say +1, -1, add a dice, minus a dice, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's the only small thing. And then I really am kind of keen to understand what the purpose of a general is, other than a re-roll. You know, why you would want to have really good staff rating on him. So, for example, Napoleon has a 10, but from what I can see, if he's the general, you can't actually use that 10. So I'm a bit flummoxed as to the interaction of this general guy. So if you guys that have played, or played this game, or played a game that this rule set is based on, can feedback and enlighten me on that, would be really, really good. And there we can see obviously the staff ratings. So 10, it's as high as you can get, but if that's your general, you're not using that staff rating, because only brigade commanders give orders. So yeah, okay, that's my thoughts on the book. Like I say, it's not a review. Do notice that it doesn't say rule book on here, but that's what I'm treating it as. But I guess it's because it's not just a rule book. There's lots and lots of background detail on it. There's it's an army book as well, because it's got all the stats and how to choose armies, and then it's got scenarios as well. So it is all in one contained book for everything, except it was missing a few bits which seem to appear in here, and that's going to be a topic for another video, I'm afraid. So thanks for joining me. It was quite a long one. I hope maybe it was informative for people who haven't read this book yet, or people who have read this book and, like me, a bit confused. I would suggest you do actually get this as well. So yeah, I'm not on commission, but if Warlord wanted to give me some more nice little characters, that's fine. That's a joke. But yeah, it's still a very good book. But yeah, if this has helped anyone, hopefully it has, then great. And those of you that do know some reasons why, or can explain things that I've missed or misunderstood, I'd really appreciate that in the comments below. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, and if you haven't already, if you can subscribe, it really help, and we'll get some more content out. Thank you very much. See you all again soon. Bye bye.